Delighted to be able to host and take part in this webinar on behalf of Trident Supplied, joined by two absolute industry legends, both well known, very well respected and well loved individuals, Simon and Katie. And I know that you're all here for those two and not me, and I can live with that, that's fine with me. It looks like yesterday Trident Supplied laid on some great webinars for us all. Hopefully today you can take away a few key bits over the next hour or so from our webinar. We're going to talk about all things hospitality and consumer, and whilst it's operator led, we're hopeful that suppliers that are dialed in will take out some insights today as well for their own businesses supplying the sector. And we'll talk over the next hour or so about a number of topics affecting the sector, some trends, some technology, the consumer, and what recovery may look like over the next 24, 36 months with these two fabulous guys on the sector. At the end, we'll have a Q&A, probably 10 minutes at the end, we'll have a Q&A and try and answer any questions that we may not have answered during the webinar, time permitted. So please use the chat function and type some questions on there, and myself and Hirsch will have a look at that towards the end and try and answer all of your questions. So on that note, let me ask the panel to introduce themselves to you and tell you who they are. And unless you've been on another planet for the last 5 or 10 years, you'll probably know who they are already, but let's start with Katie.
Hello everyone, I'm Katie Moses. I'm founder and MD of Cam Media. We are a specialist research firm and we focus on pubs, bars and restaurants, so hospitality as a whole, and also grocery retail. And our primary aim is to help our clients to understand consumers, to understand their competition, to understand their staff. It's all about knowledge.
Thanks, Katie. Simon?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Good morning. I'm Simon Stenning. I'm the founder of Future Food Service, and we provide forecasts for the future of the hospitality food service market, strategic advice on how to position and plan for the future and make the most out of the opportunities from a changing world.
Thanks, Simon. And me, Paul Pavley, MD at my very small consultancy business. 30 years experience in the trade, working across pub, restaurants and hotel sectors. 20 of those are working in the pub sector. 14 of those with Punch Taverns, where I was the MD for my last 4 years at Punch. Left Punch 2 years ago after a business sale back in 2017, and have been for the last 2 years consulting and advising in this space, and also acting as a NED for a couple of businesses that operate in this sector. So really excited to be here today with you guys, but let's crack on and go on to the first topic for today, which is really about changes that we've seen over the last 12 months or so in the sector, observations about that, who's done better than the rest, who's prepared well for the place we're at right now, and who will return to growth quicker, or which sector will recover quicker. And should we start that with Simon first?
Yeah, thanks. So, I mean, last year was devastating for the whole industry. You can't beat around the bush with that. I don't think anyone could have expected how bad it would be. But in general, what we saw through last year was the true spirit of hospitality coming through, the passion, the desire to look after people. And I talked last year about how it's no coincidence that hospitality and hospital have the same origins as a word. And what we saw was incredible resilience to make sure that as a business, as an industry, that the businesses could still provide great hospitality to their customers, and showed that real passion and determination. And of course, along with that was a flexibility, the ability to pivot, which everyone did. And I think that in general was critical last year. The ones that did that particularly well, I think those that shone were those that are at the centre of their communities, and local pubs probably came out of this incredibly well, recognising the support they could provide for their community, recognising the place that they have at the heart of us as a society.
Sure. That's great. Thanks, Simon. So Katie, your thoughts on last year?
Well, for certainly fully agree with Simon's point that it was obviously a pretty rubbish year all round. And also that the resilience that was shown by the industry was nothing short of inspiring, to be honest. The people who I think will have done better or will continue to do better are those who were willing to change and willing to change quite quickly. We didn't in this pandemic know what was going to happen. We possibly still don't. And we needed to have that flexibility to that dreaded word that Simon's already mentioned, pivot. We also needed to listen to the customer and the consumer a lot more than we ever did before. Coming out of each lockdown, the companies that I saw that did well were the ones that spoke to their customers and said, how do you want us to behave when we come out of this? How do you want us to change? What do you like that we were doing? What can we carry on doing, and what can we do better? And I think that the companies that have listened to those customers and then acted upon that advice certainly will come through this better. Preparation wise, I saw some great work in the industry. And if you look at someone like Brewhouse and Kitchen, they were constantly changing what their MO was at whatever time of the year was, depending on what the restrictions were. They were looking at home, they were looking at online. And I think that anybody who has managed to create that dual or even sort of triple hospitality offer are the people who have come through this well and will continue to do so.
Yeah, totally agree, actually. For me, you sort of mentioned a couple of words there about resilience, and I think businesses last year showed resilience. They always do, but more so last year. Collaborations, I was really happy to see last year, lots of collaborations. And even today, that the M&S and the Aldi fight about Cuthbert and Colin, and Aldi are saying, let's collaborate and put money to charity. And it's a bit of fun, I guess. They're trying to get away from that legal thing, but collaborations last year were great. Saw a lot of that last year with charities, but also businesses collaborating and doing things together. You sort of said there about Katie, about people that did things last year. We had lots of grey space last year where we didn't know what the rules were going to be. And the companies that I think did better than the rest, no one did well last year, but the ones that did better than the rest, the ones that worked well in the grey area and made plans, even though they didn't know what was going to happen in 4 or 8 weeks, but they knew something was going to happen in 4 or 8 weeks. They made plans and didn't wait until the plans were black and white, because they never are black and white. And the engagement piece from companies, I was impressed with last year. People that I follow because I go to visit them when they're open were really engaging and letting me know how they were operating and how they were feeling. And the ones that didn't do suddenly sent out an email on July the 3rd saying, hey, we're back again. Well, you haven't spoken to me for the last 12 weeks. Now you want me to come and visit you. I'm going to go and see the guys that spoke to me for the last 12 weeks, told me how they were feeling and helped me over the last 12 weeks. So the whole consumer engagement piece, I think, was great last year. And finally, I think businesses looking after their staff and actually caring about how their employees were doing out of work time. And I think if that carries on, we'll be in a much better place as an industry going forward. And on Simon's point about recovery, I think the whole suburban rural thing, we and my friends where we live are much more engaged with our local restaurants and pubs now than we were before, because we would often go into London. We're only half an hour from London. So, we often spend a weekend in London, but actually much more engaged now with our locals, which is a great thing, frankly, because it's better for all of us. So Katie talked about resilience there. So Katie, businesses large and small will have suffered last year. No one's coming out of this without a few cuts and bruises. But who has built up good resilience? Which parts of the sector do you think are better equipped than others because of what they've learned in the last 12 months? And we start with you, Katie, on that.
I think, we spoke just now, you just mentioned about, you're going to engage as a consumer with the people who have kept in touch with you. And I think that when you look at pubs, bars and restaurants, we have a personal connection to them. And those people who have kept us informed and who have continued to tell us how much they miss us and how much they want us back, I think that those people, they will show a lot more resilience. I think people who have rewarded customer loyalty, I don't know if you know Mark from the Victoria and Cornwall, he's got And he went out and went around to all of the customers that had supported him by getting meals delivered and just dropped them off a cupcake saying thank you. And it's 1 year since we started this particular journey. And I thought that was fantastic. You know, rewarding customer loyalty will always help your business to be a little bit more resilient when times are tough, because customers will want to support you more. We've talked already about those involved in their local communities. My local here, the Waverley Arms, Doug has been running the local food bank since day one. And, you know, not only is that a fantastic thing to do, but it has meant that basically most of his regulars pop in on a Friday between 11 and 3 to say hi and drop off and drop some food off. Certainly we drop a box off every single week. And now when we drop our box off, we can have a drink in the garden as well, which is absolute joy. But so those who have really supported their local communities will be more resilient. And then my final sort of point to make on this is that those that have differentiated themselves from the off trade. Now, so this isn't just about, you know, if I walk into a pub, obviously I'm going to have a better experience than I am if I'm just going to buy a couple of beers and sit in the park, etc. But you can still differentiate yourself even when you're not open by looking at what does your offer need to be when you reopen. So those people who have differentiated themselves from the supermarkets, but also the other leisure pound. We often think that if I'm running the Dog and Duck, that the Red Lion is my biggest competitor. Not necessarily. It could be the bowling alley. It could be the convenience store down the road that now does eat in, and you can buy your bottle of wine off the shelf and, you know, and bring your own. So I think people who have put that differentiation in with their businesses and other businesses around them, I think will show a lot more resilience this year.
Yeah, I agree. Really good points there, Katie. Simon?
Yeah, no, I'd add to that, I think, because resilience comes from the desire to try things. I remember, Paul, you and I walking around London and looking last year, looking at sites, so you're going, they just aren't bothered. And there were some operators that just sat back and said, we're not going to pay our rents, we're furloughed all our staff, we'll take the grants, whatever, and we're just not going to do anything. And I think coming out of this, the ones that have tried, that have shown the flexibility, the desire to do something different, to get that engagement with their customers, as Katie said, they have built up resilience and will now be able to be opportunistic. And sometimes that's a negative word. Actually, this is about adapting to a new world that we are seeing emerging. And I think those that have developed that resilience because they tried to do things. Maybe not all those things worked. Maybe they lost some money whilst they were doing it, but they tried. And from that, we as consumers will give them extra kudos. We'll, as Katie mentioned, you know, we will now give back more to them as their customers. So we recognise that, and I think those that have tried will get their rewards, and there will be new opportunities for them. And it isn't just in the pub and restaurant space, you know, in the wider food service hospitality space, those that have tried, those that are first to come out of it will win, I think, because people will recognise that they are trying to do something. And I think as this new world changes and we move to something of a faster format, in the way in which we lead our lives and the way in which we want to eat and drink, that those that have changed the way in which they can deliver, adding on the other services, those that can meet the needs for that faster food are going to come out of it better. We've seen it with the switch from the branded casual dining market towards faster food formats. Five Guys taking Pizza Hut sites, you know, that kind of thing. We're seeing those opportunistic moves trying to fit in with this new world.
It's funny actually, Simon. Interesting point in there. You mentioned at the start about when we went out last year, which would have been July time, after the first lockdown, people weren't bothering. Yesterday in Covent Garden, I walked past a number of pubs that were still shut, and the neighbouring pubs were rammed outside with queues. And then walking past a number of branded restaurant sites that are still closed, but the windows haven't been cleaned for the last year, and they're trying to convince their consumers that they care about the community, and they're worrying about a £20 a month window cleaning bill. And I know that the CFO will be saying, well, look after the pennies and the pounds, but actually, for me, it's a bit short-sighted. if you care about your community, then you'll look after your community, including cleaning the windows. But I couldn't understand why yesterday business was still closed in Covent Garden, where the ones that were open outside were busy and queues.
My biggest bugbear over the last couple of months has been walking past somewhere that still has Christmas decorations up.
Oh, yeah, and the post that's chucked through the window, but no one's answering it, so it's just building up. And
yeah, that little about your business that you can't even take the Christmas decorations down and pick up the post.
Yeah. For me, the resilience piece goes back to, again, that grey space. Businesses, I think, this will have built up resilience in the last 12 months or so, because they've done things, as you said, Simon. They've just tried stuff, and even if those things cost money, they knew they were going to cost money, but they're doing it to try and give back to the community. And I heard a number of times in the last 12 months businesses saying, well, we're going to wait until we know what the rules are. You're never going to be told what the rules are. And even pre-pandemic, I mean, you never as a business know what's going to happen. Your budgets, your forecasts are always a guess. They're always a look into the future, and things always change. You know, somebody may open up next door that isn't there yesterday, maybe there next week. So we always work in the grey areas. And some companies last year, I felt, used it as an excuse not to think ahead and not to plan, and that to me is a bit short-sighted. And the ones that did think ahead and plan, the likes of maybe Brewdog, Loungers did brilliantly, Oakman's planned ahead, even the small guys at Yummy Pub Company last year, you know, spent £200,000 during lockdown one on an outdoor area for one of their pubs. 200 grand they didn't have last year, that they borrowed money to pay for the next 5 years, that they knew would be used this year, and then they're having record weeks because of the outside area. So people that just thought, well, let's take control of what we can take control of and make plans, frankly. I think that really, that's made those companies stronger over to other companies who just treaded water, frankly. Yeah. So looking at trends then over the last 12 or so months, what have we seen over the last 12 months? The word pivoting, I agree, Katie, I don't like the word pivoting. But what have we seen over the last 12 months? What things have happened that we think have been great and impressive and market leading? What's here to stay over the next 12, 24 months from now? I think for me, the big thing for me is technology, but we'll come into that later on. For me, the at-home meal kits have been great, where businesses have engaged with their consumers at home. You know, I can now have my patty and bun or my meat liquor meal kits at home on a Friday night, and I get the quality that I would get in venue. It's not as great fun, me and Mrs. Pavley on our own, but actually it's not bad. Apart from my week where I ordered the vegan burger barbie steak, and on a Friday night was disappointed when I opened my pack to find I'd ordered vegan burgers. But to be fair, they were really tasty, actually.
And I haven't had a bad one amongst them, actually. Some better than others. Haven't had a bad one amongst them. I think that generally anything that is about gifting and delivery and through your letterbox has come into its own, because we have learned that we don't have to just go around to a friend's house with a bunch of flowers for their birthday. We can send them cocktails, we can send them gifting experiences. I've taken to getting on Deliveroo after a couple of glasses of wine on a Friday night and sending all my team gifts through the post. So Katie, who's our marketing director, has got 3 young kids, and she got sundaes, as in ice cream sundaes, for all the kids last Friday, after my glass of wine. So, you know, things like that I think are good, and they're here to stay. We know from research that we have conducted with Brew Broker that that tastes have changed somewhat, because people have become a bit more adventurous. So because I didn't get to have the experience where I'm going out to a pub, if I'm going to be at home, I don't just want to drink the same old stuff as I normally do. So people have been more adventurous with their taste, with what they're choosing wine and beer wise. And then most importantly, I believe that there have been 2 new occasions that have been created within our industry. One is the online Zoom drinks, and I doubt there's anybody online that hasn't done that, whether you're teetotal or not. And the other one is the sort of in-park or walking drinks. And I think that these are really, really important for suppliers and operators to understand, because those 2 trends are here to stay. I'm not going to go out walking 3 times a week, because I am going to be able to get back into pubs, bars and restaurants, but I'm probably still going to do that once a week. How can operators supply me with the food and the drink that I want, so I can still be participating in their brand at the same time as doing something off-site? So I think that that's really important to look at get a strategy for Zoom drinks and park and walking drinks, and that they are two new occasions for our industry.
Well, for me, Katie, where I live, in-park drinks have been here for years with my neighbour and his white label, frankly, in the park most days. What about you, Simon? I've seen you online. You've had a couple of at-home kits and numerous kits as well.
Yeah, a little bit of interference there. Not sure where that's coming from. Yeah, I've done my bit, as Katie said, trying to support the industry.
Simon, I was just going to suggest maybe Paul and Katie, can you put yourself on mute? See if that's causing the interference.
There we go. Is that any better? Okay. Right, great. So yeah, I've done my bit to support the industry by ordering as many different meal kits and makeaways as possible. But it does also highlight a trend where we can now experience some different cuisines, some different restaurants that we wouldn't necessarily have gone to because they're out of our territory. There was, I don't live in London. I live quite a way out in the middle of nowhere. And the ability to be able to order from restaurants in London that I wouldn't be able to get to easily, or from other parts of the country. I think that national reach has changed for good. So that's one element where there's been some really beneficial pivots that have worked. And I also think that they are long-term and they are here to stay, because there are occasions where we have our repertoire of places that we can go to. Now, if you live in London, your repertoire can be huge. But if you're living out exurbia, then your repertoire is relatively narrow. So therefore you have to travel. And there are many occasions when consumers will want to experience something different from restaurants without having to travel. And that's what these meal kits and makeaways does deliver. And it's interesting that those that have stood out for me, Tommy Banks, who was probably one of the first to go with the meal kits from a fine dining restaurant perspective, was unbelievable, as was Northcote from the Stafford collection. And I believe that whilst they will get back to reopening restaurants and serving customers face to face, I believe that they will, and many more will continue to provide these meal kits. Tommy Banks taking warehouse space in order to produce these meal kits. Elite Bistros, Gary Usher doing the same, and these are long-term pivots, but they're opportunistic. But I also think that those brands that have made the most of this are those that have harnessed their data. And obviously, when you're using aggregators, Deliveroo, Just Eat, Uber, etc., you lose control of your customer. And where there are now direct-to-customer online channels and providers, operators now have access to that data. And I believe that is a big fundamental shift, because they can now leverage that direct relationship with their customers, wherever they may be. So those are a couple of trends that I've seen from that opportunistic pivoting that we saw last year. I mean, opportunistic, it was necessary. Those that wanted to survive needed to do something. So,
cool. Thanks, Simon. Let's jump to consumers then. Katie, I guess, you guys have done some brilliant insights over the last 12 months or so, much of which you gave away this time last year to companies to help them plan. So thank you for doing that, Frank.
Tell me about it.
That's great. So what have you seen? What are consumers saying to you guys? What are they looking for? When will they return to normal, if there is going to be a new normal? And I know you've got some slides to share with the guys on the conference today. So maybe you can share your screen and just share some.
Let's do that, shall we? Shall we go straight on with that? I think that's a good idea. Right, can you see that okay, everybody? Fabulous. Okay, well, I'm going to jump straight into it, actually, because you know who I am and what we do, because I've already explained that. at the beginning. So I'm just going to share with you some insight that we have gained over the last 12 months into the consumer, into the hospitality consumer, and what they have done, are planning to do, and will continue to do in the future. Just a bit of scene setting here for you. If we asked Brits back in January what their their top 3 emotions were, and it was stressed, frustrated, and bored. Last week, the number 1 emotion was happy. And I think that's got something to do with pubs, bars, and restaurants. And it's got something to do with the sunshine that we are now experiencing, which is lovely. We're also feeling a lot less fear. So around 11%. People now saying that I'm actually scared about the future, whereas that was 36% in March last year. So when the pandemic first sort of hit us. The nation's top concerns at the moment are health and economy. And crime kind of went off the scene totally, but that's coming back now, and health isn't quite as important. You know, and we have had a tough time. 52% of these people that YouGov spoke to, actually this is a YouGov survey, said that 2020 was bad or terrible. I can assure you I have other words for it. 38% said, well, yeah, it's okay. But the good news is so many people are gagging to get back out to hospitality. This is all CAM research. So this was done at the end of March this year. We asked people what this is UK adults, a nationally representative sample, when lockdown, if and when lockdown restrictions are completely lifted, you know, what do you plan to do? Now, there's some really, really good news for hospitality there. You've got the 41% who said, oh, I want to take a picnic in a public place. That food doesn't have to come from home. That food can come from hospitality. 60% said, I'm going to visit a pub or a restaurant. 27% go to the cinema. So you can see there that it is really good news for hospitality, but there's a watch out here, and it's a big watch out, because it's also good news for the supermarkets. So 39% want to have a friend over for a barbecue, 32% did friends for a dinner party, 36% are going to have friends and family over more often versus pre-pandemic. So for my point here, hospitality needs to look at how they can capitalize on those 3 on the left, as well as those 5 on the right. You know, it's all about, it's not just about you being in my particular outlet, it's how can I still engage with you when you're not in my outlet. This was a survey that we ran about at the end of February, and we asked, when will you go back to pubs, bars and restaurants? 34% have said, well, I'll come back when it's outdoor seating only. 26% said, I'm not coming back until it's indoors. And 33% said, well, actually, I'm not going to return for a while. And that's not necessarily a safety thing. We also have to remember that the average UK household has lost around £500 a month in income. So sometimes that's a monetary situation. We're a week and a bit in now. It's a little bit too early to tell whether our figures were right. We will be looking at those in the next couple of weeks. What we do know is that I think around 28% of the UK hospitality industry has reopened with outdoor space only. So it'll be interesting to see what consumers, how consumers have reacted to that. We also asked, what venues are you most likely to come back to when you do come back into hospitality? And this totally supports everything, guys, Simon and Paul, exactly that we were just talking about independent local pubs, about being part of the community, about local cafes and coffee shops, independent restaurants, you know, and you get down to the 4th option there before you get onto sort of chain or branded. So this whole support local, shop local, community spirit thing, you know, that has really, really become a forefront of consumers' minds, I would say. Focus on hospitality at home. I won't dwell on this because we've spoken about it a lot, but there is one point I want to make here. If you look at, for example, a cook at home meal kit, so that's what we've been waxing lyrical about already today, 16% of consumers have actually participated in that. Doesn't seem like a massive amount, but what is really interesting here is the headroom. So 24% would consider. So you have got that section of the population that have not yet had a hospitality cook at home kit, but would happily do it. How do we get to them? How do we convince them to try that out? And it really is a tale of two tables, because 89% said that they want the restaurant brand that they, so these are, of that 16%, the 89% of them said, I want them to continue to deliver to me after lockdown restrictions end. 89%. That's a massive amount. In research, we don't often see that after participation, somebody's continued participation will be that high. 62% want their favourite restaurant brands to start selling cook or finish at home meal boxes nationwide. Remember, we have become more used to our homes. It doesn't mean we're not going to go to pubs, bars and restaurants, but it does mean that possibly 1 in 4, 1 in 5 of the visits we might have made, we'd rather interact with that brand in our home. And then we've got staycations. And I know the staycations as a word upsets some people, because some people say that's not going on holiday. I believe you're one of those, Simon, are you? And
No, not at all.
And some people say that it's staying within the UK. What we do know is that 16.2 million UK adults intend to stay in a self-catering holiday home in the next 12 months, which is far higher than it would usually be. And this is yet another opportunity for hospitality. It's not just about, I'm going down to the beach, so I'm going to find a pub down to the beach, but actually, well, I'm in a new environment. Maybe I've got a great barbecue area in my home, so I'm going to get pre-prepared cocktail kits and I'm going to do a barbecue, etc. But you can see there all the different areas. This particular piece of research we conducted with Slurp, and I think it's incredibly interesting to see how much people are happy to still have that at-home feel on holiday. Right, just moving on to gifting and experiences. Again, this is part of our research with Slurp. 22% of UK adults would prefer to buy a gift experience than a physical product. You know, that's massive. And that's even higher when we look at the younger generation. So Gen Z, millennials, they're much more into experience than into product. So all these different things that we can send as a gift, every single one of these can be sent through hospitality. And, you know, we think of hospitality at home as I'm going to go online and book this, but we don't have to. About 2 weeks ago, I booked pizza pilgrims for my dad and my brother and my stepmom, and we sent it to them. And then we all got online whilst they were cooking dinner and we were cooking dinner, had a few drinks, and for a whole hour we were chatting and laughing, and it was wonderful. You know, that was a gift experience that they really, really appreciated. So hospitality needs to be careful. It's not just about the consumer purchasing, it's also about gifting. And then just finally, a couple of bits of insight from our brand new Plan to Plate research program that's in partnership with Zonal. Now, this is actually going to be free of charge, and we'll be sending this out throughout the entire industry. So if you want a copy, get in touch with me. I'm sure that Paul will share email addresses at the end. We have to be a little bit careful to understand, I think, as an industry, and I'm not sure we do understand it fully, why people stay in versus going out. It's not just the normal, oh, I need to be safe from COVID, or actually I don't have any money. Look at the different reasons there that are given. So a more relaxed environment at home, I can cook my own food, I'm not surrounded by other people. You know, there's so many other reasons that we stay at home rather than just COVID or not having cash. So we need to understand that. We need to understand how we overcome each one of those individual barriers with our customers. So we've all had moments where friends and family have said, let's go out, let's go to the pub, let's go to a restaurant. And you've just thought, oh God, I'd really like a night in. We suddenly have a lot more option to stay in. So we need to, again, understand, you know, what makes us stay at home? Bad weather. If you have the opportunity to have an outside area, it needs to be the best outside area it can possibly be. So that bad weather is not my excuse unless it's traveling there. Difficult to make a reservation. It shouldn't be difficult to make a reservation in 2021. And I'm sure that we're going to talk about technology a bit later, but your technology has to be absolutely perfect, and your customers need to be able to get to you as easy as possible. Tempted by a takeaway instead? Fine, no problem. Have a takeaway from me. Switch to doing a Zoom call instead? Fine, no problem. I can provide your drinks for it. So there's just some ideas there for some hospitality operators to understand and to get together. There's sort of almost objection handling. You know, why does my customer not want to come to me? Here are my reasons. Okay, here's what I'm going to tell them instead. Will customers return to hospitality in the same way? Unfortunately not. It is going to be a tough road for hospitality ahead, and I'm sure Simon will give you a lot more detail in that later on. We are not going to get back to the numbers that we were used to pre-pandemic for quite some time. And again, I'm sure that Simon's got some predictions and projections for that. And these are the occasions that are going to feel the brunt, if you like, of that change. So, 16% down on going out for lunch, 18% down on dating, going out for breakfast. And then when you start to get really low down, you look at things like going out for brunch, going out for afternoon tea. These are not considered to be essential visits into hospitality going forward. So they're the ones that we really need to watch. And then just finally here, sport. Sport is obviously a way that people get together within hospitality. They eat, they drink, they be merry. I don't really know. I don't really watch sport in pubs. I think that's probably coming across quite well. But 6.9 million people we spoke to in conjunction with Match Pint will watch the Euros in a pub or bar. 4.7 million will watch some of the Olympics in a pub or bar. And 45% of publicans said that sports could play a significant part in attracting customers this summer. And I can absolutely tell you that they will. Just a final pointer here, go on to cam-media.co.uk/resources. All of these research programs are, as Paul said at the beginning, available to you free of charge, much to my absolute disgust. But no, I'm really pleased they are out there. They are free of charge for everyone in the industry. So please, log on, download what you want, come to us with any questions. Thanks very much.
Brilliant. Thanks, Katie, for that whistle stop. Excellent, as always, talk through consumer. So let's just jump on to tech there. We've talked about tech earlier on. Let's talk about tech now. Is it here? Is it a fad? Is it here to stay? What part does it play in business recovery? And what should businesses be doing more with technology going forward? And I'll start with Simon, actually, rather than Katie. Give Katie a chance to draw breath. So, Simon, what's your thoughts on that? I know you've got a finger in a number of pies, by the way, on technology. As well.
Katie, brilliant. Really, really interesting. And yeah, there are some significant consumer trends that we all need to pay attention to. I think from a technology perspective, I've described hospitality as being an analog industry in a digital world, because it was always the case that we made things, we served things. It was all about the human interaction. Now that was changing. And one of the trends that COVID has amplified and brought forward is this switch to technology, and about the engagement from operator to consumer with technology. It doesn't replace the human interaction, although there are some situations where that is the case. But it is an enabler. And I believe that we are seeing a polarization now, where in general, operators in restaurants and pubs will use technology. One, because it plays, or they have to. I wouldn't like to say they have to, because they don't. But with current table service restrictions in place, it is far better for them to use technology, whichever format it is, to get orders and payments. I experienced this at the weekend, that a pub wasn't using technology, and they went to charge me at the end of the experience just for 2 drinks, not for 4, because they'd just forgotten to add it all up. There's a significant setback for operators who haven't embraced technology if they're getting it wrong. But at one hand, in this polarization, we're seeing operators embrace tech to enable and to facilitate better engagement. I've described a new segment of the restaurant sector as being social refueling, because you can now engage with a restaurant purely through your mobile device, through an app, order, pay. All you have to do is say thank you to staff when they bring you stuff. But the whole engagement can be through your mobile device. That's not really a restaurant. And that's why I'm describing these things as being more about refueling in a social environment than being a restaurant. But in this polarization, if at one end of the scale we have this tech-led automation, from a consumer perspective, we've got to expect to pay less for it, because we're not getting the big cost of human interaction. And then at the other end of the scale, we don't want technology to do hospitality for us. We want the incredible, caring, artisanal, expert, experiential service. But we've got to recognize we're going to have to pay for that. And the cost of labor is only going to continue rising. So the difficulty in this polarization world, where technology can do so much at one end, and service is at the other end, is what happens when you get caught in the middle. And I think that's where operators that don't embrace technology to facilitate and enable their engagement and still try to provide great service, but are in a competitive environment and price is key, that is where it's going to be very difficult for operators, and typically in that branded casual space, to provide great service at a lower cost. And that's where I think technology is really going to play a part. Obviously, with all the pivoting that's happened, then the technology, that enabling and that engagement between operator and customer is critical. And Katie used the Slurp research, and Slurp is a great example of handing back control and data to operators, interestingly set up by operators themselves. So I think, you know, there are countless tech solutions out there. Some will win, some will fall by the wayside, but I know where my money's on. But it is here to stay. We have seen a move for the industry into the digital world, and it's just about how you engage with it in that recognition of polarization as to the role that technology can play.
Well, thanks, Simon. Katie, anything to add to that?
Only a couple of points, really, which is, you know, I'm always banging the drum for there's no point in having technology for technology's sake. You know, it should make the customer experience better, and if it doesn't, then it shouldn't be there. We know from research that we did pre-pandemic that 56% of the UK population believed that hospitality was behind other industries in its use of technology. So we know that there was a need to introduce it, and it has been introduced at record speed for obvious reasons. I think order and pay is a no-brainer for those who want it. It doesn't have to, you know, there was a story of a guy not being able to be in a pub garden because he didn't have a smartphone last week. You know, that can't happen. We can't allow that. We can't allow hospitality to become elitist or selectionist. You know, we can't allow that. But having said that, they are pain points for customers, and we should be able to solve pain points for customers with hospitality, with technology, sorry. And then just one thing to add to that as well is that remember that technology gives us the opportunity to gain as much data as possible about our customers. You know, Simon mentioned earlier that if you're using, you know, some of the Deliveroo, Uber Eats, Just Eats platforms, you're not getting all of that data. Whereas if you've got your own technology solution, then you will get that data. You can understand your customers better. You can deliver better for your customers. And I think that can only be a positive, but absolutely agree with what Simon has already said, which is don't take away from what hospitality actually is.
Yeah, running low on time, but two bits I want to sort of add, I guess. The one bit is, I use your phrase all the time, Katie, make sure technology enhances the consumer experience, because, you know, think about them in the journey. And the last part is about data. You collect lots of data with your tech, whether it's EPOS or whether it's order and pay or other stuff. Use the data. Collect the data. There's lots of data that you can use for the business, and should we do much more of. Okay, so we talked earlier about the sector recovery. I'm going to hear from Simon in a minute. Simon, the sector was closed for March of 2020. 2021 started with a 40-week lockdown. Many businesses still closed until May 17, and we're all in with restrictions until at least June 21st. Is the sector ever going to recover? You've got some insights to share with the audience today. Do you want to share your screen and just talk through?
Yeah, we'll do. I'll fly through these really quickly, recognizing time, but. These are key themes, data that are drawn from my latest report on the future of food service, rebuilding hospitality, looking at the next few years. This is updated post the budget and the roadmap for reopening. And I think, look, you know, the headline from last year, and I said it was catastrophic, a drop of £47 billion from 2019, 52%. In the industry, and that excluding accommodation, you add that on, it's even worse. And you can see each of those sectors as to how badly they were affected. Some were more resilient than others. Fast food certainly sticks out as being resilient because their ability to do takeaway, drive-through, delivery, etc. But everyone else really badly affected. The calculations that we've made with our forecasts over the next few years, the total of lost potential revenue is £125 billion as a result of COVID. And I think highlighting some of the research that Katie showed, the reluctance to go back or the changed behaviours, it is going to be different. I think it's important to recognise how and why it will be different, which sectors in the market are going to change completely. So here's one example of where it is already changing, just showing how dramatic it changes. This is our analysis of branded restaurant chains, the top 35. Between mid-2020 and the end of last year, they lost 21% of their total number of outlets through CVAs, administrations, etc. So that's a big change to that sector, which was a growth sector. What's interesting is the analysis that we've subsequently done this year, looking at which brands are taking those closed sites, because they physically don't disappear. They either remain closed or they get taken up again by someone. And look at the change. It's moving much more towards a faster food format, which fits in with busier lifestyles, a move towards more leisure activities and wanting to fit more in. Also better value. And something we were talking about earlier on was about price rising and the role that VAT is playing this year in driving up some of those like-for-like sales comparisons, but also driving up prices or prices being driven up. And it's these faster food formats that are providing great quality food at a lower cost. And I think it's interesting to see it's faster and it's lower cost, it's still great value. This is something which we're seeing as a seismic change. I've talked about polarization with the technology, so I won't go into much detail, but it just shows how that spread of restaurants now has got tech at one side, enabling and engaging, and at the other, it's all about the expert service, but spend levels have to reflect that. The other thing which I'm forecasting as a big change for the industry, and picking up on what we were talking about, some of the pivots, the makeaways, the meal kits, some of the research that Katie showed, these new food models, we're seeing technology play a part in grocery retail and the way in which Amazon is going to shake up that whole sector with the use of technology. But it's happening throughout the food service and hospitality world. Contract caterers moving towards the micro market. It's glamorized vending by any other name, but it is about providing food all day, all night, whenever people want it. And that again is a big shift from the result of COVID. We can get what we want, wherever we want it and whenever we want it. So we're seeing these sort of changes. The use of cubicles, lockers for food delivery that you can pick it up when you want it. This is, name's completely gone. I was going to say Italy. It's not Italy, it's Eatsa in San Francisco, with the kitchen behind, working behind the scenes, delivering all sorts of food into lockers. We'll see more of that within certain environments. We're seeing the rise of central production kitchens, something I talked about with some of the meal kit restaurateurs taking their own spaces. We're seeing this also with contract caterers moving away from having detailed big kitchens on every site and moving it into a central production unit. We're seeing the use of hotels, the development of hotels using their kitchen space for other purposes rather than just serving hotels because of the way in which that's changing. The move to warehouses, as I've touched on. This is all part of these new food models, including ghost kitchens, dark kitchens, and virtual brands. And already this is changing at such a pace. Deliveroo Editions started as porta cabins in a car park. They're now big warehouse spaces, factory spaces with 10 kitchens in. Virtual brands, these are all from TRG, cooking out of Frankie and Benny's, Chiquitos. And whilst the restaurants are closed, these brands are still selling through the delivery aggregators. And I think we'll see some big changes with virtual brands. Brilliant example here from the States, Mr. Beast Burger. It's one site that it started off in, one guy on YouTube vlogging about Mr. Beast Burger. It's got licensed, it's now in 300 different restaurants across the States, out of somebody else's restaurant, somebody else's kitchen, selling Mr. Beast Burger through delivery aggregators to their local market. And I think this is one way where the new food model world is completely different, because you can create a brand without bricks and mortars, and you can have it nationwide. So that was a very quick run through some of those new food models. How does it play out for this year and onwards? Well, 2021, we've got some growth. We're seeing it right now, but we've got to remember we've lost a great chunk of revenue from the first quarter, which was always going to be the case. It's still 33% down on 2019. You know, some will bounce back better than others. The growth rates over last year don't necessarily say hotels are going to do better than pubs. It's about in relation to how badly they were affected last year. And we can see how they do come back. But it's still not back to where it was in 2019. And that's going to take some time, because there are these economic impacts which are going to play a part over the next few years. We do have to worry about inflation. And operators at the moment are not worried about that. They're going to push prices up to get away with what they can. But ultimately, we've seen it today, inflation pushing up to 0.7. If that goes up further, we'll see interest rates kicking in. Then we see government debt becoming more expensive. And this is doom mongering and painting a horrible tale of a spiral downwards of cost loading up. But we could see economic impacts through the latter part of this year having an impact on hospitality. And remember those 800,000 people who've lost their jobs and those that have been impacted with reduced income. Hospitality is all about discretionary spend. And as soon as you cut off the top of that, it's hospitality that loses out. The other thing, and again, I don't want to be a doom monger, but we have to recognize that next winter could see more problems, could. I don't want to, it's not scaremongering, but there will be something that will crop up during the winter, whether it's a new variant, whether it's a problem with booster jabs, whatever, whether it's our intolerance to flu, because we've lost that immunity, we'll see some problems. We have to be recognizant of it. But we do build. And the good news is that in 2022, we add on another 30 billion of revenue. These forecasts are built up by, Paul knows this because he's seen the spreadsheets, by subsector, by number of outlets, by weekly turnover, by quarter on each of these years for the breadth of the industry. It's not until 2024 that we get back to 2019 levels. So it just shows how badly it's been impacted, and the facts are that it is going to be different going forward.
Brilliant. Thanks, Simon. And I can account that spreadsheet has more rows than I've ever seen in my, or columns rather, in my life. It's a massive spreadsheet. Right, we're running out of time, but quickly, Katie, Simon, we're going to use 2 bits of advice for business for the next 12, 18 months. Katie, you go first.
I would say, you know, if you're an operator, be ready for change, be a constant part of the conversation, you know, speak to your customers, understand those new customer missions that we spoke about earlier. For suppliers, I think that it's just incredibly important that we collaborate, and we've seen so many great collaborations, you know, and being a supplier to the hospitality industry is no longer, not that it ever should have been, but is no longer just about putting together budgets and just putting together the sort of, you know, even promotions for operators to react to. It's about actually collaborating and working in partnership with them so that they can understand their customers, your customers, and I think that's the only way forward really for the industry.
Simon?
Yeah, and add on to that, I think the new food models that I've touched on, talked about, I think it's critical that from a supplier perspective, that they understand how production is going to shift and how operations change and will change going forward. And then for operators, it's recognised they need to be flexible. They need to follow the consumer. Pret famously last year recognised that they could no longer sit there and just wait for customers to come to them, that they needed to be closer to where their customers were. That's true for all operators. I think whether it's through data, whether it's through loyalty, through the personal touches, it's getting closer to their customers.
Yeah. For me, the operator advice I always give is just have the best bloody business plan you've ever written for your business for the next 18 months. It's going to change, but just write the best business plan you've ever written before for the next 18 months. And for suppliers, really understand where your clients are at and help them return to growth quicker. And my example I always use is, don't give them an option of a new burger, a new chicken burger to replace their chicken burger. Give them a way of selling more chicken burgers to return to growth quicker. So understand where your clients are in their journey and help them grow and return to growth much quicker than their plan. Because, you know, as Simon talked there about, the recoveries can take a number of years, but within that, some companies will recover much quicker. And how can you become one of those? How can you really learn how to win in your local area? So just quickly looking at some of those questions on our chat. Lots of comments about experiential cocktail kits. That's great. Royal Lancaster Hotel invested in a virtual conference centre. It must have been expensive. It could really pay off in the future. I think it probably will do. Experiential dining was talked about. Dominique asked, is there an opportunity to collect valuable market information about the community by offering supper clubs that help people in the local area meet, libraries, book clubs, etc. Guys, Katie?
Yeah, there's a resounding yes from me. I think that anything you can do to embed yourself as part of the local community can only be a positive.
Yeah, I think for me,
totally agree. And those that have done something this last year will come out of it smelling of roses.
Yeah, and for me, if you're going to do that and collect data, know what you're going to use the data for. Don't just collect the data. Have a plan for how you're going to use it. Katie, a question for you here. How do the figures on percentage planning to visit an outlet in the 3 months from May compared to pre-COVID? Maybe they can approach you afterwards, because I guess you won't have the data to hand.
If you drop me an email, I'll find out for you. I don't have those figures straight to hand at the moment.
Please just drop Katie a note. That's great. Katie, I can't believe you don't know the data.
I could make it up.
A comment here about a concern about tech, and could companies become too reliant on tech and disconnected from their guests?
Simon? Yes, there is that danger without a shadow of a doubt. However, I think that operators need to position themselves. It's almost like your business plan. You need to make sure that you are, as an operator, embracing technology where you want it to play a part, but recognize what it can do and what it can't do. And so I think if you want to be known for your service, then you've got to play that skill up, but you need to be charging for it, because you've got to differentiate on that. Whereas if you want to position yourselves as being more tech enabled, then that's the position you take. So yeah, there is a danger, but it's one that should be embraced one way or another.
Katie?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. The only thing I would add is that, for every piece of technology you put into your outlet or into your business, ask yourself, what problem does this solve for my customers? And if you can answer that question and you can put that piece of technology in, if you can't answer that question, then it shouldn't be there.
Okay, Helen's got a question here. I'll aim it to you, Katie, actually. Do you think there's a demand for personal service, or could there become more of a niche offering as tech plays an increasing role? I know you talk about personalization quite a lot in your reports.
Yeah, I mean, I think this kind of goes back to what Simon was just saying, which is that if you want to be known for your service, be known for your service. If you want to be known for being tech enabled, then do that. I think that the personal service side of things, but pre-pandemic, we know that consumers wanted a more personal service. They wanted personalisation. They didn't want to look at a drinks list and not be able to say, oh, sorry, could you add that or take that away? So we know that personalisation is a thing. Now, obviously, a lot of that sort of fell by the wayside during the pandemic, when it was more about getting product out to people. And this is in, you know, grocery retail where we work as well. So I do think that we're going to see that alongside things like sustainability come back. And yeah, absolutely, technology may be an increasing role in our lives, but no matter what we're doing, we can't technologically eat or drink anything. You know, we actually have to do that in real life. Therefore, that technology should complement that, you know, that aim.
Brilliant. And final question, and I'll aim it to Simon, because I was having a chat with Simon and Mark Wingett on Sunday on Twitter about this. So what do you feel the purchase of Leon means to the high street? Simon, you're an expert. What do you think?
Yeah, so a really interesting move, and obviously it's a development through to forecourts and then potentially into Asda's. But first and foremost, it's about forecourts and the changing role of fuel filling stations in a simplistic term. As we switch to electric cars, we need to recharge for longer. And so that is what EG Group are doing with Leon. What does it mean for the high street? Yeah, the emphasis will move away from the high street in those sites. And whilst that's a short term, I've talked about offices coming back. Over the longer term, there'll still be scope for that. But when you look at fast food businesses, what they need is large volumes of traffic. Short term, that's not office workers, city street footfall. It is drive-throughs. It is road traffic. Commercial traffic is at its normal levels. It's 2019. So I think we've got that short-term switch. Longer term, yeah. I mean, Leon already were moving to transport hubs and to roadside. So it was a slow movement. It's been exacerbated.
Lovely, thanks. Well, we're just over time, 4 minutes over time. So thanks, Simon. Thanks, Katie. Thanks, Dominique, for having us on. And thanks all of you for dialing in and spending an hour of time today with all of us. Hope you taken a few snippets away, and good luck in the year ahead. Thank you all.
Thank you, Paul.
Cheers, guys.
Hold on. Thank you. Bye.